Hi everyone! In this episode of fast-paced tutorials, I'm going to show you how you can back up your app services. So the option is here. Under settings, you have the option to back up your application. But in order to be able to use this feature, you have to at least be on S1, which is the lowest production tier. So technically it is only supported under production and you have to be at least on S1. With S1, you can back up your application 10 times a day. With premium ones, S stands for standard, P stands for premium. With premium tiers, you can back up your application up to 50 times a day. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to scale up my application to S1. Now that it's done, I can go to backups. So if I go to backups, you can see here that it says that backup is not configured. Click here to configure the backup for your application. The first thing you have to do is to create a storage account if you do not have one already. In my case, I have to create one. I'm going to call it fast-paced tutorials-backup. Kind of your storage account, I'm going to select V2, and then replication locally redundant is good enough for me. I'm going to select Canada Central for the location, and so I cannot use dash here. Okay, so that's the first step. Microsoft Azure uses your storage account to store the backups from your app service. And then I have to create a container here called app service backup, for instance. You don't want it to be public, usually, at least. In my case, I'm going to select private and then create. So this is my blob container that I'm going to use to store my backups of app service. The next option is to schedule it. So I have the option to schedule my backup and say run every 6 hours and start from this time and date. There is a data retention policy. By default, it's 30 days. You have to put 0 to keep them forever. 30 days is enough for me. And the other option says to keep at least one backup, which is obvious what it's doing. So I'm going to keep it at yes. It also gives you an option to back up your database. Based on the configuration of your application, it can detect and find connection strings, and based on that, it can find your databases. Your databases could be SQL Server or MySQL Server. It will include a backup from the database in the backup file that it's generating. The only thing to have in mind is that the maximum size of the content plus database backup cannot exceed 10 gigabytes, and that's like a hard limit that's put on this feature. Your backup cannot exceed 10 gigabytes in size, no matter what. In my case, I do not have any database, so I'm just going to click on save, and that's it. If I click on backup, I can actually trigger the process manually. Well, a backup is already in process because the first time you create your backup, it will start backing up your application, and then you have the option to restore. I'm going to give it some time to finish backing up my application, and then I'm going to try again here. So I did click on backup, and as you can see here, it is creating a backup for me. This is the one that was created automatically when I configured the backup for the first time, and this is the one that it's being created after I manually triggered. And if I restore my application, I can just click here. It gives me some options. To restore my application from app backup, which are the ones that we have here, you can choose one of them. You can choose the storage, and then you can select a zip file from a storage account or a snapshot that I'm going to get into in a few minutes. So let's say we want to restore our application from app backup, and I have two here. I can select this one, which is the latest one, and then you have the option to overwrite the existing app service or create a new one. And then there are some advanced settings here which I'm not gonna touch. Click on OK, and it's going to start restoring your application. And here it is. It says validation succeeded, restore app service from backup. The other option to use here are called snapshots. Snapshots are periodic restore points that are being created for your application automatically. Pretty much every hour, Microsoft Azure creates a snapshot from your application, and it only captures the changes, so it doesn't back up your whole application for you. It only captures the changes you've made to your files and your application, and then it uses that information to restore your application to a previous version or previous state. There are two things to have in mind with the snapshots. The first thing is that as of April 2020 that I'm creating this video, this feature is still in preview, as you can see here. The other thing is that it is only available if you scale up to one of the premium plans. So in order to use it, I have to scale up my application at least to P1. Let's do it. It is done. And now if I go back to backups, you can see that I have the option to restore my application using one of the snapshots. You can select from the list of snapshots, and as I mentioned earlier, as you can see here, they are being taken every hour. And then you again have the option to restore and rewrite your existing app service or choose another app service. And then you can just click on OK. It will restore your application using the snapshot. The other thing to mention is that there is a limit of 10 gigabytes for the backups you're taking from your application. If your application has too many files, too many images, too many PDF files, or too many documents, and your backup exceeds 10 gigabytes, the process will fail. So for example, I'm now connected to my app service, and here I have an HTML file and then a folder called images. Let's imagine that inside of this folder I have 12 gigabytes worth of images and files. So my backup will fail. What should I do in this case? The way it works is that I have to create a file here. A new file called _backup.filter. It has to be inside of the www root folder. You can open it and put a list of files or directories here that you want to exclude. For example, I can say site www root images, and then this way I can exclude the images folder. I'll just save it, and that's it. So if I now create a backup from my app service, it will not include the images folder, and that's how you can manage the size of your backups. That was it. I hope you learned something new today.